Tell me how this happened to go to the Cocoon Club for tomorrow with Sven Feet. How did the idea happen?
Okay. The idea for this show at the Cocoon Club with Sven started years ago, back in the 90s, when we first performed together at the very, very first Cocoon show club in a warehouse here in Frankfurt. And we've been friends for many, many years. You know, Sven, I think, was the first guy that I ever heard play Skyscraper I Love You at the Sound Shaft in London back in the early 90s. And so we've had this long running relationship and this conversation that we would like to do something together. And Sven's been doing his kind of things for a long time. We've been doing our live shows and also our web radio shows. And this idea of improvisation together at the Cocoon, back where it kind of started to develop a couple of years ago. And now, because of all the things that we've been doing, we have the opportunity to do it on this global scale via the internet and all that we've dreamed about really for probably 20 years, me and Rick.
And did you take a look at the club, at the venue, and decided to do some special stuff with the lighting or with audio visuals?
A few weeks, maybe a couple of months ago, some of the guys came over, Rick came over with some of the team to have a look at the club, the spec, see what it was like, and we're blown away by it. It's a great space for us to be working in. Normally, you know, Underworld is used to working in these vast arenas or large spaces, and so it's been a long time talking about getting back to a club environment again, where there's a completely different dynamic. So that was the first thing. The space was very, very positive. Secondly, we could work without the big screens behind us. That was kind of important, that it was back to being about the music again and the improvisations. And then when the web TV cast offered itself as an opportunity, we realised then we could start to improvise visually as a kind of precursor to a possible television network that we could discuss.
So is the internet very important for you, that you can show your stuff where you perform all different kinds of stuff, that you can decide, oh, I put this video from that gig into the net?
The internet is extremely important to what Rick and I do as Underworld. Our website, underworldlive.com, has become a place where we publish new music, we give away video, live concert recordings, artworks, and it's become a place where we have freedom of expression that we were crying out for many, many years. And when we had the opportunity to go independent for a while, that's when we began to put all this material out to publish, to do the web radio shows, and now this web TV that we're doing, this improvisation with Sven, is a natural extension of this I guess this platform that we've built for ourselves. Some would call it a shop, but it's not a shop. It's a way of publishing that enables us to put out work whenever we feel like it.
And how's the reaction? I read that you have some forums of the fans where they can talk to you to take a look at it. How's the reaction for the River Run series?
The River Run series, the response to that has been phenomenal, both in the press and in our fans. I think most of whom feel that there's a return to the experimenting of the early years, and for us that's a real compliment, because it was our intention to be free of some of the constraints of the kind of commercial requirements that come along with having a traditional record deal.
And I think you also released 5 12 inches, is that right? With some remixes of this stuff?
Yeah, in conjunction with the downloads, the 3 downloads in the River Run series, that River Run series has gone on into 5 12 inches that have been getting some fantastic responses. Which is what we used to do in the early days. Put some 12 out there and see what happens on the dance floor, see what the feedback is. You never intend to sell millions of records, but the idea is to be building a vibe again, and it's so easy to find yourself moving further away from that grassroots that always was the feeding place for our work. And when Stephen Hall at JBO Records suggested that we should do that again, it was kind of strange at first, but the feeling is like so familiar and exciting that that's something that we're going to continue to do.
Yeah, I think it's very important that people can buy 12 inches, especially DJs, because a lot of things still work with vinyl instead of MP3s and other
Yeah,
stuff.
well, I think it's important too that people are able to get hold of 12 inches. Rick and I buy a lot of records. I'm a record junkie, and particularly because we've been doing the web radio shows, we've been buying a lot more vinyl too, using turntables as well as the CD turntables. The MP3s are a great way of carrying things in a small container, thousands of tracks. That's a great way, but I don't know, vinyl, that sounds great. It just sounds great.
And what has changed in the dance music scene, especially in the UK, when you compare the 90s to today? I think a lot has changed, but what is the main thing that has changed?
You know, we're people that don't go out much. We don't get out much. It's quite sad, really, isn't it? We get locked up. But the dance scene, as we see it, almost from the outside, is that it ceased to be this big extravaganza and this that somehow seemed to be larger than its content and was crying out for reinvention. So when the bubble burst and it was no longer the big mighty dance explosion that it had been for many, many years, we saw that as probably the best thing that could happen for the genre. What we're hearing is this kind of reinvention of dance music that's it's probably the single greatest source of inspiration to us, are these small labels with these new ideas, fresh ideas. Some of them are familiar ideas that they're representing things that some of us did 15 years ago, but they're representing it in a fresh way that's giving us a real kick and the enthusiasm to respond again, which is what we need. You know, I think the thing is, the longer you do something, it's very easy to fall into this rut of, hey, we're kind of comfortable and things are going fine, and look, we make money, and hey, and that's a very dangerous place to be. In 2003, Rick and I realized that that's where our lives were. We were in a very comfortable position with our work and with our lives. That's a terrible place for art. You need that feeling of urgency, of some kind of fear that someone's coming up behind you that's better, or someone's ahead of you that's much better and leaving you in the dust. That there are people around you that are really hungry and trying, and you need to feel that hunger again. And the last 3 years for Rick and myself has been about putting the fear back in our lives and that sense of urgency and excitement.
Yeah, as you say, I think the reinvention is very important nowadays because people get bored so easily. They take some MP3s, download it from the net, and then there's the next MP3, and music has become so disposable.
Yeah, I think music has become very disposable for most people. That's where performing live is such an important part of what we do, because that can't be recreated. You can bootleg it. We've never had a problem with people bootlegging our gigs, as long as they don't sell them. You know, swap the MP3s, whatever they want, videos of the gigs done on their cell phones, fantastic. Don't sell it. But the live experience is something that just can't be recreated, and because, as here at the Cocoon with Sven, everything is going to be improvised. There's not going to be a set list. We have no idea what's going to happen. So every night should be a reinvention of itself. That's been one of the most pivotal things in our music and our work for the last 15 years.
And how is it? Do you listen a lot to the performances then afterwards, or do you say, oh, it's over and the next performance is starting, or do you think, oh, at this night the song sounded so great, I hope that I can recreate it somehow for distribution or for putting it on the net?
We do listen back to the shows quite often. Me a little less. I find it quite painful to relive the past. I know Rick does, Darren Price and Danielle and Malcolm, who are part of the greater team that enable Rick and I to do what we do. They listen to the work and because they have to put it out on the internet and decide which pieces go out for free to the people that log on. And then they'll come up with, this is a good version, this is something that we should listen to again. And quite often we're playing material that's not been released, so we're actually writing it as in front of people. So these versions that appear can very often become the blueprint for the way that it should be on an album. King of Snake many years ago was that case in point. We played at the Red Box in Dublin, and we had absolutely no idea. We had this groove and this concrete poem that kind of ranted over the top of it. And before the show, somebody said, "Don't do that, it sounds crap. Do something else." So I did something else, and it became the basic blueprint for the track. And that kind of thing happens all the time.
What I find interesting now is this soundtrack that you did, the collaboration with his name Gabriel Yard for Breaking and Entering.
Yeah.
How were you approached for that? Is it the usual Underworld stuff, or is it very ambient or tame? What can people expect from the soundtrack?
Well, beginning of last year, Anthony Minghella, the film director, approached us to write the score for his new film Breaking and Entering. And he said that he'd written the script for this film based in London. It was his first contemporary film, and he'd based it listening to our music. But he was very specific about the kind of music of ours that he was listening to. He called it Underworld's more esoteric side, not so beat driven. He also presented us the idea of collaborating with the composer Gabriel Yared, who'd worked on many of Anthony's films. Rick and I had already opened up the doors to the possibility of collaborations. We've begun working with Brian Eno, and when you work with Brian, it's a very, very slow and long process sometimes. And in walks the great Gabriel Yared, who was, a revered composer, and so we were up for the idea of this because it's such a strange idea. And when we met Gabriel, we realised instantly that he was not only a talented but a very open-minded, generous person who hadn't got an ego, and that was instant for us. So we started to collaborate via the internet, meeting up in studios in London and at home, and Gabriel working in Paris, and then eventually meeting in Abbey Road Studios and just improvising. And the three of us formed a trio, which I think shocked everyone who knew Gabriel. They thought him as the maestro who came in with his documents, gave them to the orchestra, and they performed. And here he was, sat at the synthesizer or the piano or accordion or drums and jamming with the band. And out of these improvisations developed the score to the film.
So it's quite a mellow score then, or does it have some scenes where it's more up-tempo?
There are some that are a bit more up-tempo, but we're using things like the cajon, the Spanish percussion, and other kinds of percussion rather than electronics. We're using electronics more as a treatment than as an upfront element. We're using a lot of acoustic instruments, EBow on acoustic guitars, orchestra, treated piano. I mean, the album does open with the London Philharmonic Orchestra treated through electronics, and which is, I guess, is sacrilegious in some respects. But it's to us and to Anthony and to Gabriel, we wanted this fusion to happen, where it neither sounded like Underworld or Gabriel Yared, but something where one composer was passed through another composer's mentality. Out of this now has formed a friendship which we intend to make another album. There's already a notion to tour with an orchestra, making a completely different kind of music.
Yeah, so it's quite interesting for you as well to get something out of that collaboration for the movie, for your own music.
The experience of the collaboration was extreme. Actually, it had an extreme effect on our writing, and towards the end of the making of the film, then Danny Boyle approached us to write the score for his new movie, and we were in a position where we were desperate to get back to making our album, and said no. But then he showed us a rough cut of the movie, and we said, okay, you win. And that's nearly finished. That's nearly completed now. Very electronic, very, very electronic. Taking a new view of Ligeti, and electronics, and there are these kind of mutated choirs that we've created as well, that to try and recreate what to us is a very bizarre journey of science fiction film. It's a very bizarre journey that he's describing.
The movie's called Sunshine?
The movie's called Sunshine, yeah, and it should be out in March. So suddenly we've become film score composers, which really was going back to our very early roots. What Rick and I had dreamed of doing was making music for films and for commercials and possibly galleries, because we are interested in sound which has a positive effect on spaces. And to us, sitting in a darkened room with a big screen is a great space to be making sound in.
Yeah, it's funny because you say, because Danny Boyle, he used Born Slippy, of course, for his movie Trainspotting, and it wasn't supposed to be like this because you weren't asked to write a song for the movie or something, because he listened to a lot of Underworld stuff while editing the movie. So of course everybody knows this song. It's your song, biggest club track, one of the biggest club tracks in the world. How do you feel about it today? Does it get on your nerves when people want you to talk about it? What's with the song?
We're always asked to talk about Born Slippy, and there's always a slight embarrassment from the journalist's part asking about Born Slippy, and yet there shouldn't be, because it's never been a problem for us. There's a joy now. There's a detachment from the horrors of the experience that it talks about, which also is a great reminder. It's like, hey, 26 years later, Rick and I are still together. Life has got better. The horrors aren't around anymore. And check out all these people getting happy off of it. Then, what's to complain about that? It's still a joy, really. It's the music that we're involved in was never intended to be a chore. In the 1980s, Rick and I were in a band called Underworld Mark I, and in Freur before that, where we played the same every night, and where I would kind of glaze over and sing and fall asleep in front of the microphone. And when we set off on this part of the journey, our intention was always that it would remain alive for us and fresh. That's why the improvisations, like here at the Cocoon, it's crucial to us that we want to walk out on stage, that we want to do this thing, and so that the improvisations are there to keep it fresh for us, but also not knowing how the audience is going to react and caring how they react, not just putting it out the way that it's meant to be played every night. That's all part of the wow, will they, won't they, I don't know, fear, excitement thing that goes along with being in Underworld on the road.
Yeah, I think because of the success with Born Slippy, a lot of people, they got into dance music in a different way, because perhaps they say, oh, cheesy dance music, I don't like that at all, but now there was this song and everybody knew it, and they said, oh, I have to buy the soundtrack. I like the stuff, I have to buy the LP. And I like dance music a little bit, I have to find another artist perhaps. Do you think the same?
As quite a few people said that they came to dance music through listening to us. I think for some people, I'm sure many people came to it through the Chemical Brothers or through Prodigy or Orbital or Left Field, but we were fusing together some elements that were considered indie and rock and blues, and some people that kind of were on the fringes of those genres were open-minded enough to explore and discover that, hey, Left Field are cool, and the Chemicals are really, really cool, and they're fusing stuff too, and got them into dance music. And my apologies. I'm sorry, it's ruined a lot of people's lives. I'm so sorry.
What about the DVD that you put out, Everything? Because I think at first the people, when the DVD thing started, everybody was not so sure that it would be the next big thing, but you said, we have to do it, there's something happening with DVD and everything, so we are the first to put everything on a DVD that is possible.
It was funny making the Everything Everything DVD because it was exactly the same as it had been in the early 90s when people said to us they heard Dark and Long and Skyscraper I Love You and a couple of other of our tunes and said this isn't dance music. If you want to make dance music, get rid of the singer, and if you want to keep the singer, get a drummer, because then it's indie. You know, there's no genre for this, and you can't do this. So we had to do it ourselves, and then that developed into the story that you know. It's exactly the same with the DVD. We went to our record label and said, we want to put out a DVD. Rick had researched DVDs and watched the record shops, how the DVD section had grown a little bit, had read about things happening in America and the rest of the world. And we knew where it was going, and we had to fight. And there was a guy at the record label that was on our side and enabled us to make that DVD, and it went on to pick up a lot of awards and all the other things that it did. But we remembered that guy, and now he's one of our managers. So it's like, if we get on with people and they understand what we're doing, then it's like, wow, would you like to work together and enable us to make real these ludicrous ideas that we have? When we pulled off when we pulled out of being in the traditional music business in 2003, end of 2003, and went alone with our own small label for a while, it was because we knew that the ideas that we were having of putting things out on the internet, of having the internet radio show, of doing internet television, were impossible to describe. They'd not make any sense. But you know, if you put all this stuff out, why were you giving all this stuff away? You should be selling it. It should be racked like everybody else, and it would be impossible to explain. And the DVD, the Everything Everything DVD, it was just one of those cases in point. It was so obvious that was a good thing to do, and yet we had to fight all the way to make it happen. It was a really quite a painful experience. And then you look back on it and go, you know, why was that so hard? The writing was on the wall.
Yeah, I think it's interesting what you say, because when you release your own stuff now via your website, I think the big music companies sometimes they don't have too much faith in music anymore. Is that right?
It's important for an artist to be able to explore in the way that they need to explore, and to be constrained into the formats and the scheduling that traditional record company marketing adheres to is destructive. It's as simple as that. I had an email the other day from a friend who cares deeply about music and has a lot to do with the music industry, about Beck's album, which is not eligible for the UK charts because it's got some extra bits on it that Beck, as an artist, feels that he wants to give to people who are buying his records, and yet he's not allowed to, because that does not conform to a format that is standardizing and is killing creativity. That's not art. It's got nothing to do with art. So for us, it was really clear we had an opportunity to opt out of the music business for a while and describe alternative ways of working, and which is what we've done. So now we can go back to the business table and say, well, this is what we've done. It works. Would you like to take part in this thing that we're doing? If we continue to put out physical records, it's we need also to be able to publish on the internet, because the shape of a record, that constrictive time zone, and the racking and the cost of the artwork and what does and doesn't conform to charts like we care, you know, is it's impossible. It's impossible to work with. You know, I really would rather clean toilets, absolutely, than take part in something which undermines creativity. You need to get up in the morning and say, I've had an idea. Today we're going to put out 20 tracks on the internet today, you know, and we're going to grab our cell phones and we're going to create some art, and that's it, you know. And not to have to sit down with a meeting and explain to people how in 12 months' time it's going to end up on a CD. It's like, what's that got to do with progress, moving on, you know, art? It's got nothing to do with art at all. Just to tell you that the show that we're doing with Sven, I've used this. I got very into photography with this, and I must have done about 50,000 photographs this year with this. Sent them off to our friend John Warwicker, one of our partners at Tomato, who lives in Australia, and he's turned them into films and slideshows, and he's sent them back, and they are now part of the live show. And that to me is so exciting, that you can go boof, 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 see stuff, gather it together, jam with your mates who live on the other side of the world. The jam session continues and it's going to be presented here at the Cocoon Club. That's so exciting. But try explaining that in a traditional marketing meeting, and it really wouldn't, it would be at the bottom of the agenda of importance.
I read in an interview that you presented the album 100 Days Off to the music company, and Rick said after listening to it, oh no, I have to mix something again on the album. Is that true?
Yeah. When we put the 100 Days Off album in, and they said, yeah, that's great, Rick did, about the next day said, no, it's not finished, and we pulled it back in again. Yeah, that's typical Rick. He's like that. You know, he hears things, and he's right. Well, I believe him. You know, I put my faith in him absolute, and he hears stuff that I don't hear. But these days, I know when to argue with him. I know when he's going to spend weeks and weeks killing himself for nothing, or weeks and weeks working hard on something for moving something that much, that makes that much difference. It was the same with the DVD, Everything DVD. That nearly killed him, but he was right.
So it's easy to talk between you and him, that you could say, okay, have 3 more days, work at it, and then we put it out later?
Yeah. So, well, you know, sometimes the extra work that he requires us to do means that something goes back 6 months because it misses a schedule, and I believe in that too, because only good has ever come out of that. Most of our albums, I think only maybe Boku Fish, no, maybe 100 Days Off actually did meet the deadline that it was intended to. Every other album has gone back at least 6 months for some reason or other, and it's been better for it.
And are there any dance artists that you admire? Some groups or solo artists that you really followed their career and say, it's a good artist or good band?
We really like what James Holden is doing right now, and people like DJ Cozy. You know, we play out things that are put out here by Cocoon and by Compact label, and slightly further afield bands like Apparat, Efterklang, a lot of Danish electronic music I really like. And there are some kind of crazy things coming out of Japan. There's also a label called Shit Catapult that we like and support a lot.
So you're still able to listen to a lot of music, or do you really need to take some spare time and say, okay, no work, I want to listen to some stuff to inspire myself?
Well, we listen to music a lot. I particularly hear a lot of music because the small labels send the records to me to put together for the radio shows with Rick, and I'm still very close to John Peel's production team at the BBC. Every week we talk about, you know, what's happening, what labels are doing interesting things, what artists are doing stuff, what gigs they've seen, because I just can't get out to do these things. So we have quite a very close bond with supporting them and they supporting us. So I get to hear new things every week, really. Another package of new material comes in, or somebody tells me something. I'm buying records every week, or searching the internet, because we do the web diary on our underworldlive.com site that we've done every day since the beginning of 2000, and there's a link on there to other artists, mostly music, but sometimes visual artists or authors. And so I have to be looking all the time who's doing something interesting and researching it every day on the internet and listening, and yeah, that's good, because I know that if I don't believe in it and somebody comes up to me and goes, that was crap, I'm going to be embarrassed. So yeah, there's a lot of researching goes on, and that's inspiring. And then Rick and I will sit down some days when we're meant to be working in the studio, and we'll just play records to each other, and that's a great day when we do that. And then he'll say, "Do you know, let's do a radio show." Okay, let's do a radio show. And the beauty of the internet is you just put the word out, and in a 24 hours you're doing a broadcast to the world, and it's exciting.
The journey of Underworld, when you started, it's really like there was no stop in between. Can you tell a little bit?
There's a funny thing that when shortly after meeting Rick, I realised that's where my life was meant to be. It's like when I met my wife, the day I met her, I knew that's the woman I was meant to spend the rest of my life with, and it's been exactly the same with Rick. When I first met him, I kind of thought, he's a kind of geeky guy who knows about electronics and he's pretty good with the synthesizer. And very soon after that, something said I have to work with this guy for a very long time. I didn't think forever, but it's turning out that way. And there's always been something between us, even when we've not got along personally. We've always had this desire to work together because we feel something good happens when we work together. I don't know, we inspire each other, we push each other, we do things that are unlikely. He's the missing chunk of my thinking, and maybe I bring something similar to him too. And we've got over a lot of our differences, and my troubles aren't what they used to be, so that strain on our relationship isn't there anymore. And what has happened is that just gradually, I guess there's been a lot of refusal to be what people want us to be the big thing, to take the big thing, to want to be the big whatever it is, and just to carry on working with people and being attracted to people, like the guy who's one of our managers now. That's a good man. There are good people in our team. You're really talented. Do you think you could do this? And then you realise that somebody blossoms into a very creative person within their sphere and enables us again, and we move out again. And our journey has taken us to some remarkable places and has connected with some unlikely people. To be befriended by John Peel, and through him through his show, Eno. These people, these were heroes of us as children, who are now friends and advisors, but on a level of not striving to be the greatest stadium dance band in the world. That really doesn't, if it happens, it happens. But what's important is that we're able to feed our families and do what we want to do. We just want to do what we want to do and put food on the table. That's it. That's really it. And if whatever else happens is a cherry.
When I see you now and talk to you, really down to earth, because other people sometimes they're big stars and they behave like stars. I think that's sometimes very sad, because you remember where you started, and when you talk, it's so vibrant, the collaborations with everybody, and I think it's really nice.
Very kind, thank you.
And the lyrics, I read about this book where you write a lot of stuff that you hear and everything. You have it with you. It's a special book. Tell me a little bit about it.
It's called The Old Witch, and it's got the all-weather cover. It's a very traditional book. Comes in many sizes. I think it was in the late part of the 90s. I just started writing in notebooks the things that were going on around us, writing things that people said and things I saw, little fragments, and I didn't really understand what it was for, because at that time we were still writing traditional pop songs. Three things happened. One, Rick, when we reinvented the group in the early 90s, said, you've really got to change the way you write lyrics and songs, because you can't write lyrics fast enough, and it's just this, we're waiting for you all the time to write lyrics, and you've got to change your way of thinking. A friend of mine who lives in Hamburg, she gave me a copy of Lou Reed's New York album. That blew me away, and I just thought, how does this guy write about these very personal experiences in this way? This like he's writing a conversation. And then I was given a copy of Sam Shepard's Motel Chronicles, which I'm a great admirer of Sam Shepard's work as a playwright. and there's this book of tiny vignettes of unfinished pieces, no beginning, no end, just the middle bit. And I thought, that's just like me, I can write the middle bit. And so from then on, I started to just keep these notebooks of writing things that I saw, heard, conversations, thought, and it was like a description of my state of mind that was described by the things that I picked up as I went throughout the day. And hence Born Slippy is a description of a rather unhinged drunk guy wandering through Soho. And these were the things, the description, it was like a kind of an expressionist point of view of a mood based on the elements that I was picking up, and that's what I've done ever since. You know, I can't write in a traditional way. Well, whatever a traditional way is, I'm useless, absolutely useless. But this way fascinates me, and out of it has come two books. You know, the book on Skyscraper, I Love You, and then the last one was In the Belly of St. Paul, which was based. The first one was based in New York. The second one was based during the very dark times. During my wanderings in London, and you'll see a lot of that on the screen today. And there's several new books now on the. You can tell we just write every day now, and have to because we use up a lot of words in our music.
And the tomato stuff,
yeah.
You still do something for tomato, or is it only in between when you have time?
Rick and I are still members of Tomato, yeah. It's become a much more disparate group now, kind of how we hoped it would do. That it's, for us, Tomato was a vehicle for fine art. It was installations, it was books, it was paintings, it was sculpture. Those are the things that excited us the most. The TV commercials, when they were lots of crazy text, or the music that Rick did for Apollinaris, you know, that, to me, that was fine art too. That was making these beautiful statements for 10 seconds in someone's house, and that was when I loved Tomato at their best. Now, because we've all fled to the four corners of the world, everything's done via the internet, so we have a lot of jamming going on. Here today, Anthony Rogers is one of the key members, programmers at Tomato, is enabling us to do this thing tomorrow night. He's the guy behind the website. We talk to him, we're developing this multiplayer game with him over several years. John Warwicker at Tomato, as I say, lives in Australia. We write books with him, we make films with him, and the films you'll see on the show on the 12th. And the others we stay in touch with, and we kind of pass ideas around, and then occasionally a jam session happens, and whoa, it's an installation in a gallery. That is Tomato at its best for us. The other stuff, we were never that drawn towards. That wasn't in our blood. We like the jams between people from disparate disciplines. That's exciting. When a visual artist comments on a piece of music and a musician comments on a piece of visual art, that's something quite extraordinary happens there.
So you talked about the collaboration with Danny Boyle for his next film, and when another Underworld CD, a visual CD or an album will be released, will it be on your label then, or how will that happen?
Our intention is to continue releasing things, releasing audio and all the art that we do on underworldlive.com. However, it was always clear to us that we would get back in business with a major record label. It's really quite an important part of what we do in order to be able to get across to more people than we are able to doing things on our own. It's really important. We don't just want to make music in our bedroom and enjoy it amongst the people of the village. You know, we're about getting our music out to as many people as possible. Hence the webcast that we're doing, which is potentially to millions. That's really is quite key to the way we're working. So next year, our intention is to have a track early part of the year and follow with an album later on a major record label.
And the internet, do you think that it's easier for young people or young bands or artists to get known via the internet because of websites like MySpace?
I think it's a lot easier for artists to put their music out now than it ever was. It's kind of more punk than punk. I thought acid house was more punk than punk, but this is more acid house than acid house. You can make it and put it out. There's actually no need for a physical thing anymore if you don't want that or you can't afford to do that. Again, it's freedom for creativity. There's a band in Wales, one guy called The Ends, who only has a MySpace. He has 4 albums up there, and we heard him on a live session on the BBC last year. Amazing. We won't let him send us copies of his album because we know it's going to influence us so much, and he keeps saying, when can I send you my new music? So, not yet, we've got another film to do, please. And we keep encountering these artists, and on YouTube, a mate of mine keeps sending me old Zappa interviews and Beefheart films and stuff like that, and then occasionally he'll say, look at this, and a friend of mine who's a Hollywood film director going, this is fantastic, and now he's making films for YouTube because of this freedom. I saw many years ago, I saw the Wooster Group, you know, the great theatre company from New York, Willem Dafoe and others, make this really crappy little video thing that went out on television. I think it was like started on public access in New York, and then I saw it on one of the channels in the UK. And this was about 10 years ago, and I thought, why are they doing this? This is the great Willem Dafoe. Most of these actors are great Hollywood actors. Why are they doing this crappy little thing with a video camera on some wasteland in America? You know, the penny dropped. It's this freedom thing, this freedom of expression. Just because you are up there on the big screen doesn't mean to say that you don't desire getting up in the morning and with your mates making a film in 5 minutes and putting it out. Just putting it out. You know, it doesn't matter what the critics think, you put it out because you need to express yourself in that way. Consequently, there is a lot more crap out there too, you know, but it's always been that way. That as the medium expands, the level of crap expands, but also the opportunity for good things to come through that wouldn't normally have a platform because they've got a singer and they don't have a drummer, and they use video on stage, and people don't understand that. And all these other things that we're seeing now, these groups that are doing things that are mad, and they're wonderful, but I can't imagine a major label listening to them. You know? And now they have the opportunity to build an audience, which, as we did in 91, 92, that audience their opinion becomes irrefutable. And you know that. If you can build up that groundswell, it's like being in a van and touring round and building up your audiences, playing pubs and clubs. If you can do that, then you can go to the table and say, look, we've got thousands of people that log on our site and download our music. Do you want to talk? You know, do you want a piece? Do you want to play and have fun? Because we do.
Okay, the final question, as you mentioned YouTube, I took a look at the old videos like Feuer and Underworld. I was going like, my colleague was sitting in front of me and said, I know that song. Yes, I'll do an interview with one of the guys from the group. He's from Underworld. He said, what? This so interesting because I didn't know the old videos. Now the record companies, sometimes they don't have them anymore, but now on YouTube you can watch them. Yeah, you can watch them again. How is it for you when fans of yours see your old videos? Do you say it's okay, it's a part of my life, or do you think, oh, the old stuff, let it be?
We've never been embarrassed by the past. The past has enabled us to do what we do today. The mistakes we've made in the past have enabled us to turn opportunities away that would have interfered with our progress now. And so consequently, when the fans say, "Hey, have you seen this? It's a Fur video, or it's an Underworld Mark I video," and there's some really cheesy videos out there. Great, yeah, you go, yeah, great, yeah. If it wasn't for that, we wouldn't be doing this now with such confidence. We might have been swayed off this path if we hadn't have done those things. I still think Doot Doot's a really good track. And oddly enough, here we are today in Frankfurt, which was the first place that Rick and I ever flew in a plane to come and work with Connie Plank. And is a long-lasting, deep memory of us spending a week at Connie's studio, meeting Holger Czukay, and being in that amazing studio, hearing the recordings that he'd done, a band called Kowalski, which blew us away at the time, the instruments that they were using, I mean, this guy was a god to us. And here we were working in his studio in Germany, where this fantastic music came to us via John Peel. You know, here we were in the epicenter of what was creativity to us. You know, working with the great Connie Plank. So it's the past. You know, it's got some really good memories too. Really like working with Connie, and I'm really sad that he's not here today to share some of this, because he would have laughed. He really would have laughed.